The prophet Isaiah shares with us in his writings the story of his call. And it all happened in church, in the temple, in the midst of worship. It was centuries later that John on the Isle of Patmos would find out also, like Isaiah, that sometimes the language we have been given is difficult and not able to describe some things we see or hear or sense. It is inadequate to really describe God who is in heaven. To truly experience the grandeur of God, the immediate presence of God, we creatures must call upon extraordinary senses. But we have them. Those extraordinary senses are the part of us that is described as being created in the image of God. There is something in us that is directly of God and perpetually through our lives call us home, shall we say, or call us beyond what we can immediately see. For Isaiah, it was a moment in the midst of worship. Isaiah experienced God as a splendid, bright presence, completely filling the temple, so much so that all that Isaiah could see was just the hem, H-E-M, of God's garment. And of course, for Isaiah and the people of Israel, the temple was in heaven. So God filled all of heaven. And God was surrounded by these winged heavenly beings, one of which would be the emissary between God and Isaiah. And it is the interaction between God and Isaiah that gives us a template we might use to expect and understand and describe what our own encounter, close encounter with God might be like, or look like, or sound like, or smell like. I used the video this morning because if you're like me, God's creation points for me to God in so many ways. And because we are unique, each one of us has different parts of creation that awaken that part of God that is in us. Different settings for different people make us hunger for that immediacy. Some are ocean people. Some are mountain folk. Some love the wide open spaces, and others love the coziness of the lush green valley. Some are drawn to the palette of colors that only creation can give us through the year. Some are awakened by the arts, music, visual art, performing arts, even the symphonic band. By the way, which I was very moved at Christmas time, and I'm expecting the same thing tomorrow night. But all of us here within us have that essence. that we were given individually by God, and it is awakened at times in our lives. And I want to say to you this morning that when you begin to feel that awakening, you may be close. Isaiah teaches us that what we can anticipate with an authentic experience with God. Isaiah finds that when we finally truly encounter God in our lives, there is going to be this sudden sense of unworthiness, sinfulness. When we encounter the perfect, we suddenly own our imperfections. And it's not like comparing ourselves to our friends. It's not like looking in the mirror first thing in the morning or stepping on the scale. It is not like having formidable in-laws. Indeed, life makes it very easy at times for us to feel unworthy, but the God encounter is different. God's judgment meets us in all these secret places that we hide from others, and even at times we deny for ourselves. The light finds the darkness, the very core of our sin. We cannot hide it from God. We cannot deny it. We cannot blame someone else. It is who we are. We have been fully and completely unmasked by the one who put us together. To say it is a humbling experience would be very much an understatement. But here's the difference between the world and God. The world casts judgment. God casts judgment and mercy. The world judges to bring us down. God judges to lighten our load and to lift us up. The world judges to pile on shame, and God judges to reduce and restore, redeem, and call us to a new beginning. To truly encounter God is to be overwhelmed by God's amazing grace. How sweet the sound that saved that wretch that I know I really am. You see, when Jesus told Nicodemus that he had to be born again, it wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. If you don't think such an invitation is worthwhile, I can tell you, I wouldn't mind as being healthy now as I was when I was 5 years old. I'd probably hurt myself, but I wouldn't mind that at all. In the presence of God, the gift of grace is given. It is an invitation to start over. It is a challenge to become who you know you were meant to be to begin with. No matter the past, we have a present and we have a future. There is nothing more miserable in life, I don't care if it's 10 years or 95 years, than living a life that you know is not really the life you were chosen to live. I would rather live 10 years fully being who God called me to be than live 95 fighting it. One of my favorite stories was told by a good friend I made in Marianna, Florida, a Methodist preacher, Henry Roberts, tall, skinny fella. And he tells the story of growing up in a small southern town with an older brother. And it was that generation that I remember too, where, we didn't have city recreation. We had neighborhood recreation. Very unorganized. But regardless, we were seasonal in our sports: football in the fall, baseball in the spring, swimming in the summer. And of course, you had to pick the captains, and the captains had to pick the teams. And Henry, in telling the story, said, you think I look skinny and awkward now. He said, you should have seen me at about 6 years old. He said, but every time my brother was chosen as a captain, he chose me first. And of course, it was only later that Henry understood why. Because his brother was bound and determined that he would not be chosen last. And that is what God does in God's grace. God chooses you, even me. And trust me, I don't bring any more purity to the table than the worst of you. And it's not out of merit. A lot of what the world offers us today is because you're the best at this, or you scored the highest, or you had the best grades, or you're the best looking. No, it's not about that. God chooses you because of love and in spite of yourself. But it doesn't stop there. You see, Israel, and I'm not getting political, but I just want to say this. I think Israel is making the same mistake today that they made when they were face to face with Yahweh. And that is, Yahweh called Israel to be Yahweh's children, not as an act of making them a monarchy, but making them Yahweh's servant to the world. So when we experience the grace of God in our lives, it is not an invitation or a call to be something special in the sense of, look at me. So in the story of the call of Isaiah, when all this grace and mercy traversed between the throne and Isaiah, the question finally came aloud: whom shall we send? And we sing it when we say, here I am, send me. Israel's big sin that they never, and still to this day, I do not think has overcome, is that when God calls you, it is not into kingship, it is into servanthood. If God called us into kingship, Jesus would have never died on the cross. But God calls us into servanthood. Everything in the Bible from Genesis to Revelation says if we dare to seek God, God will find us. And when God finds us, we will feel like dirt. But that doesn't make any difference because God is going to shower grace upon us. But the question is going to come: whom shall I send? And I question you today, are you brave enough to be sent? Will you dare? Will you dare to be sent? In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Let's